audience participation already. That's excellent. You haven't had very many drinks. That's cool. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the 14th Ignite Liverpool. Which is slightly crazy. I don't know if we'd have started them if we'd realised we'd still be going after 14 of them. But anyway, no, they're good. They're good. They're good fun. I'm Adrian. I'll be your compere for the evening. So basically, you won't be listening that much to me, which is good. You'll be listening to 10 really cool, interesting people instead, who'll be giving us a load of kind of rapid-fire talks. If this is your first Ignite, basically it's the really short presentations, people talking about what they're passionate about. So each talk, they have 20 slides. Each slide is only shown for 15 seconds. So each talk only lasts 5 minutes in total. So they're kind of rapid fire. And if there's something that doesn't interest you, which I'm sure won't be the case, then there's only 5 minutes to wait before somebody will be talking about something completely different. So that they're all good fun. I'm sure there's something else. Oh, we're going to have like 5 talks. Then there'll be a break for a bit where you're going to get more drinks and stuff. And then at the start of the second half, we'll have 1-minute pitches. So if there's a thing, an event, or a project that you're involved in that you want to just get up on stage and give a very quick 1 minute, hence the name, pitch, just to kind of tell people what it is, how they can find out more about it, then come and find me or one of the other organisers in the interval, and we can get people up to talk about those things at the start of the second half. So, and because he's gone off now, that the little bubble machine's Bubblino, and he's watching Twitter, and every time somebody mentions Ignite Live on Twitter, he blows bubbles to let us know we're being talked about on the internet. He'll be heckling people during the evening, usually. Anyway, without further ado, we'll get on to our first talk of the evening, which is a man who's up for his 7th, we think, Ignite talk in a row. That's like 7 Ignites at a time. It's not that he got up and he did 7 talks. That would be a bit full on. And so if you can all put your hands together for Dr. Tom Williamson, who's going to tell us about yeast, which is man's best friend.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. When we're ready.
Oh, hello.
Right, here we go. Yes, my talk is yeast, man's best friend. I consider yeast to be man's best friend and not the dog. Hopefully I'll explain why. So why on earth would I be up here telling you all about yeast? Well, several years ago I did a PhD in yeast. That's me in a very fetching gown from the University of Manchester. Because yeast is a very, very important scientific research tool, but it's also used in all manner of practical applications such as beer and bread. So I'm going to be talking about the baker's yeast, which has got the Latin name Saccharomyces cerevisiae. Don't worry about that too much. You have dried yeast, which we're all familiar with on the left, and that's what yeast looks like under the microscope. Kind of boring, just big fat cells. Saccharomyces cerevisiae is a microorganism. It is a fungus. It's in the same family as mushrooms, and it's a budding yeast. It divides by budding. You can see that occurring on the right. Now, one thing it's not is bacteria. A lot of people think that because it's a microorganism, it must be bacteria. No, bacteria is very, very different. Yeast is eukaryotic. It has lots of lovely organelles in it, so it's all quite complicated, quite compartmentalized. And this is important because pretty much everything that isn't a bacteria on the planet is a eukaryotic organism. So plants, fruit flies, us, and even a load of cute puppies. They are all eukaryotes. So we study yeast to look at really basic biology, things like growth and cell division and genetics. And there's one thing that I find absolutely fascinating, is that yeast has about 6,000 genes and humans have about 25,000. So essentially, if you take the genetic material in yeast and multiply it by 4, you end up with enough for a human. And I think that's absolutely amazing. Research-wise, it's also incredibly useful because you can freeze it at -80 Celsius and keep it forever, essentially. And all deletion mutants are available. So if you're just studying any gene, you can just call up someone and say, I'd like a yeast strain without this gene, please, and they'll just mail it off to you. It's brilliant. So it's a really useful model organism, which we've learned a hell of a lot from. So now I'm going to move on to practical applications. And the first one is bread making. Now, this has to be the most annoying thing for a yeast researcher to hear whenever you read the recipe telling you to dissolve the yeast. You don't dissolve yeast, it's a living thing. So what does it do? Well, it leavens the bread. Very straightforward process. You've got your yeast in your bread, and it converts some of the carbohydrates and oxygen into CO2, and the gas comes up and you end up with lovely leavened bread. It's a process called respiration. In humans, when you have carbohydrates and oxygen, that makes CO2, and we're very happy. We're ridiculously photogenic as well. But if we don't have any oxygen, then we end up making lactic acid, and that hurts. Now, yeast, when it's got oxygen, also makes CO2. But when it doesn't, instead of producing lactic acid, it produces alcohol. And that, of course, means one thing. It means booze. For example, beer. It's made in a process called fermentation. Beer is pretty straightforward. It's just malt, water, hops, and yeast. You get some aerobic respiration as well, therefore you get the bubbles as well as the alcohol. And when you've made beer, you can make yeast extract. You can take the leftover yeast and put it through all sorts of various horrible treatments, and you end up with Marmite, which is delicious, I believe. It's also used to make wine, and there's very little to wine, to be honest. Wine is just fermented grape juice. You can make it in enormous vats, just like that. Not a huge amount to say about wine, really. And however, with champagne has a secondary fermentation, so you have to be doubly thankful to yeast for champagne. You have the yeast in the bottle, and that produces the carbon dioxide, which makes champagne fizzy. You can also make whiskey. You essentially start by making beer, and you then distill what comes out, and that distillation process gives you some very, very concentrated alcohol. So I say cheers. Let's hear it for yeast, man's best friend.
Thank you very much for that, Tom. I like whether you got the puppies in, so there was still some of man's best friend, the dog, supposedly. Our second speaker tonight is Joan George. See, that's great. Obviously well known to the audience. We're getting kind of preemptive applause. That's great. And she's going to be talking to us about words, and presumably using some words in telling us about that. But I'm sure we'll find out more when she gives her talk. Invite you on stage. That would be And got some more applause. You've practiced now.
So where do we get our words from? Mostly we get our words from our parents, from our friends, and our environment. So please don't throw anything up, just my mind's gone a blank. So how do we make our words work for us? Work out how you want to be in the world. Use positive phrases and words, and let your mind just take you and make the best of it. And we can apply a placebo effect to heal ourselves by using positive phrases, and then allowing and trusting our mind-body intelligence to do the rest of the work. And this is a great illustration of how powerful words can be. Right now, imagine biting into a lemon. Instantly, your mouth starts to water, and there isn't a lemon in sight. Be careful of the word but, because generally speaking, anything that precedes but isn't true. So replace but with an and you'll have a truthful message. The brain doesn't compute negatives very well. try not thinking of an ostrich in purple boots. You've got to think of it first before you don't think of it, and then it's too late anyway. And just like parents saying to their kids, be careful, don't fall. What happens? The kids fall because they've heard the word fall, not the don't. And then the parents think that the kids are being naughty. And on top of that, we think roughly 70,000 thoughts a day. So is it any surprise that we don't really hear what we have to say to each other? We're so caught up in our own thought tangles. And if negative words rule your life, you don't allow space for any positive ideas or thoughts. So effectively, you're blocking the possibility of any possible and positive change. And if we had friends that spoke to us like we speak to ourselves, how long would we have those friends in our lives? In fact, if there are thought police around, we'd probably all be in jail. Our thoughts cause biological and physiological changes because our bodies respond to mental input as if it were real, and this then becomes our reality. Remember, our words largely come from others, so if the words don't suit you, change them and find a new way to think so you can master a new way to be. Holding on to angry and resentful thoughts about others is like holding on to a hot coal. It burns like hell until you find the right person to throw it at, and then you might fumble and drop it on your own toe. If there's something that you don't like, try seeing it from a different perspective. Metaphorically speaking, try, instead of looking through your windscreen, look through your side mirror or even your rear view mirror for a different perspective. Nothing goes away until it's taught us what we need to know. So stop feeding that one fly with negative thoughts, otherwise you'll end up with a swarm of negativity going on in your head. Thoughts create stress which can impact different parts of the body. Do you ever feel like you're carrying the world on your shoulders? That you've been stabbed in the back? Or that you feel sick to the stomach? Even animals pick up on our word and tone of voice. We get such a good response from our pets if there's love in our tone of voice, rather than raising our voice in anger. How many of us shout at our computers? Be kind to your computers. Everything has energy, even if we can't perceive it. Computers have electromagnetic energy just like we do. If you point in judgment at others, look at those 3 fingers pointing back at you. So who are you really talking about? Does that other person that you're pointing at have something in them that you don't like in yourself? And kindness in words creates confidence. Kindness in thinking creates profoundness. Kindness in giving creates love. And just to finish, please remember to match your words and thoughts with your desires and dreams. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much for that. That's kind of a talk about words, which I think has just given me lots to think about instead, which is good. Now, our next speaker, Catherine, is very dedicated to Ignite. In fact, she's come down tonight to talk to us about porpoises, and she's missed 2 sightings to be here. And so I think that's just real dedication to coming and telling you about it all. So if you put your hands together and welcome Catherine Lorengel.
Okay. Hello, and thanks for having me. I'm here to talk to you about the amazing wildlife that you can find on our very doorstep. I am the regional coordinator for a charity called the Sea-Watch Foundation, which is a nationwide charity studying cetaceans, which means whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And my regional work here in Liverpool is funded by the Vodafone World of a Difference programme, who we are very, very thankful for allowing me to do this. So what can we see in the seas of the northwest? Well, these are three of the most common species, starting with the smallest on the lower right-hand side, which is the harbour porpoise, sort of smaller cousin of the bottlenose dolphin that many of you might know from Flipper. And then on the lower right-hand side, we had the minke whale. So in a bit more detail, the harbour porpoise is the smallest cetacean in Europe. It's only about 1.5 meters. It's widespread in the UK. It's one of the most commonly sighted species. And in the northwest, it has actually been seen as far inland as Widnes and Runcorn. So the most commonly known species of dolphin is the bottlenose dolphin. The ones we get in the UK are about 4 meters long, and they're actually one of the fattest in the world. They're very stocky, sickle-shaped fin, and in the summer they're often spotted off Hilbre. And many people confuse dolphins and porpoises, so this is just some pictures to sort of illustrate the difference. As you can see, a sickle-shaped fin on a dolphin, triangular on the porpoise, and a very distinct beak in the dolphin, and not so much on the porpoise. So that leaves the minke whale, which is the smallest baleen whale in the UK, second smallest in the world. It can be easily told apart from other baleen whales by the white patch on the pectoral fin. And last year it has been spotted off Blackpool and Liverpool, and we're hoping for some more. An honorary mention to the grey seal, which is obviously not a whale or dolphin, but it's a marine mammal, and we do spot it quite often bottling like the individual on the top, with the head sticking out of the water. And so where do you go to see these animals? Not that far, as it turns out. We've spotted 2 porpoises today off New Brighton. Bottlenose dolphins are often sighted off Hilbre, off Blackpool. We've just recently had common dolphins, and in the Great Orme, a lot of porpoise as well. So why do we bother with this? Well, essentially we want to understand these animals a lot better so we can protect them better. And we also, being a charity, want to raise awareness for our work to get a lot more public support and support our efforts. And how do we go about this? Well, regional groups, a lot of the research is during land-based watches, but we also organise public events, and we're very excited that we're actually going to have the first boat-based survey in Liverpool Bay this year. So what are land-based watches? It's essentially what it sounds like. It's a 2-hour watch where we record environmental conditions, boat traffic, and of course any sightings of dolphins or porpoises. But it also gives us a great opportunity to talk to the public and show them the animals. And yes, everyone can get involved. You don't have to have any background in marine biology whatsoever. There's lots of different ways to get involved, which we're going to touch on very briefly, such as home-based volunteering. Again, as I said, wrong one, sorry about that. So first of all, reporting your sightings is very important for us. You don't need to be an expert, no background whatsoever, just tell us what you saw, what did it look like, where were you when you saw it, when did you see it. And for the home-based volunteering, as I said, you don't need to be a marine biologist. In fact, we are looking increasingly for people with backgrounds in journalism, media, or fundraising, as well as school representatives to talk to the children and, raise awareness in the younger generations. You can also join a regional group, which is essentially me. You take part in watches and public awareness events and boat surveys, if there are any. And essentially just help us collect more data and raise public awareness for cetaceans in the northwest. If you're looking for something more permanent and for a nice holiday in Wales maybe, you can do a 6-week internship with the Carding Bay Bottlenose Dolphin Research Project, where you can gain lots of experience doing field work, and of course also data entry. On a more local scale, we have a very exciting event coming up, Liverpool World Ocean Day, which is a fishy day of fun for all the family, and as well as a dolphin species ID workshop with the Royal Rangers on the 13th of July. And of course also National Whale and Dolphin Watch 2013, that should say, which is an annual event by the Sea-Watch Foundation where we just try to get out as many people as possible to spot dolphins all around the UK and report their sightings to us. And if this sounds like something that's very exciting, you can get in touch with me to find out more than I could cram into these 5 minutes. You can email me, or you can find me on Twitter or read my blog on those addresses. And thanks very much for having me.
Thank you very much, Catherine. Now, don't all rush off to New Brighton. It's going dark. You won't be able to see the dolphins by the time you get there. Just go tomorrow or something. Stay around for some talks and stuff. It'll be good. Our next speaker is Shiksha Garg, who's going to be telling us about happiness and not making a difference. So you see, you won't be making a difference this evening because you'll be not watching for kind of purposes and stuff. And so, but you'll still be happy because you'll have heard this talk. It'll be great. So if you could all give a big round of applause for Shishka.
Hi everyone. Actually, the topic is only happiness. To be honest, I'm terrified to be standing here because it's not every day that I get a chance to speak to so many people. So I'll try my best to make sense. My name is Shiksha Garg. I'm a marketing postgraduate from University of Liverpool. And today I'm going to talk to you about something which all of you can relate to, that is happiness. Before that, can you all please take a minute and think about something? I want to ask you, how many of you feel that you are genuinely happy? Please raise your hands if you think you're genuinely happy. Wow. I'm excited to see the number of hands going up. But according to World Health Organization, every sixth person in this world is depressed. But the good news is that it is controllable. Actually, according to a survey, 40% of our happiness is in our own hands. We generally attribute happiness to completion of an event, like getting a good job, or maybe getting a handsome partner, or winning a lottery. But this kind of happiness is generally short-lived. And in order to have a more, I would say, better happiness, you should try to make happiness like a state of mind. Oh God. I think there are 3 simple ways of being happy: gratitude, feeling good about yourself, and spreading happiness. If you can savor the small stuff and be thankful for all the small things in your life, you'll really see and appreciate that you have so many things to be thankful for. I suggest each time you're sad about a job or something like that, count your blessing and see that if that changes your mood. There's a website called happify.com which helps you, record such stuff and account for things that you have to be thankful for. Feeling good about yourself. I'm just going to read a paragraph from my favorite song called Born This Way, and that will give you like the whole crux of what feeling good about yourself means to me. It says, "No matter gay, straight or bi, lesbian, transgender life, I'm on the right track. I was born to survive. No matter black, white or beige or Orient made, I'm on the right track. I was born to be brave." And the third is spreading happiness. The more happiness you give out, it multiplies and comes back to you in greater numbers. It's like when you think you're doing someone a favor, you're just lucky to have a chance to help yourself. If someone causes you grief, you should think from a broader perspective that will you be sad about it in the next month or so? And if not, if the answer is no, you should just move on. So let's test this formula which I'm trying to say. I'm going to share some jokes and laugh hard as you can if you want, and we will see how do you feel at the end of it. First, this was a message found on Yahoo. It said, "I've been calling YouTube all day to come and film me, but no one answers. I have some really funny stuff, but they won't come." Second is, it's a question for the ladies. How do you think men filter their laundry? Does anyone want to answer that? No? No, it's in 2 categories, filthy and filthy but wearable. And last, this one is silly. I'm just going to skip that. What is the opposite of dominoes? Domi doesn't know. So I hope now you see what I mean. In the end, I just want to tell you one thing. If you enjoyed this even a little bit, make one person happy today or tomorrow, and you will see the difference. Or better still, make this a daily habit. Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you for being a great audience.
Happiness, the greatest gift that I possess.
impromptu kind of Ken Dodd moment in the corner. That's great. Do you guys want to come up and do a bit of a dance or something? I'm sure we could take a quick break now.
I've got no silver and I've got...
Thank you for that. That was awesome. I'm in my best filthy but wearable clothes, obviously. And now the last speaker in the first half, and that's Catherine Ford, and she's managed to condense 9 months of her life into 5 minutes to get it all across to you guys, because this is the kind of the output of her master's degree, and that she's managed to squeeze down. She'll all be much cleverer at the end of all this, and then you go for a drink. It'd be great. So, Catherine Ford.
Hopefully, I've managed to condense it. Okay, so as you already know, this is part of my master's degree, which was essentially looking at how your facial appearance can affect how you're treated, especially within the criminal justice system. Now, it's probably no surprise to any of you that we make character judgments of people as soon as we set eyes on them. These judgments are fast, intuitive, and unreflective, and they affect all aspects of your life. It's been found that attractive people get better outcomes in almost every significant domain of life that can be measured. In fact, some researchers have found that attractive people earn on average 12% more than unattractive people, which is a bit of a problem really, because it's us uglies that need the cosmetic surgery. But one of the things that you've sort of got to think about is, okay, if everyone makes these judgments, how accurate are they? Because they're affecting huge amounts of people's lives. And some researchers have found that, yeah, there's a kernel of truth in this judgment that we make of people as soon as we look at them. Whereas other people have found that actually people's personalities can be completely opposite to what you think just looking at them. So I was looking specifically at how facial appearance, yes, that's what I just said. Despite the unreliability of the judgments, it still affects things as important as the criminal justice system. So the specific questions I had were, how does facial femininity and masculinity affect how you're treated within the criminal justice system? And how does perceived agreeableness affect how you're treated? Now, we didn't actually look at real people within the criminal justice system. What we did is we created a survey. But the first thing we had to do is create composite faces, which is basically where you take a load of different faces, feed them into a computer, and then you get an average face. And these are just some examples that I found on the internet. Then, if you've got the right information, you can manipulate these faces to look, in our case, more or less feminine or masculine, and more or less agreeable. And that's what we've done here. So these two top guys have been made more masculine. These bottom ones have been made more feminine. On the left, we've got low perceived agreeableness and then high perceived agreeableness. And I think we can all agree those two guys on the left we wouldn't want to get in a fight with. We then presented 12 questions that looked a bit like this. Where it describes a crime and then shows a face and then says, do you believe this guy was guilty or not guilty? And we asked these questions regarding rape, assault, and burglary. And we found overall this is what the facial effects had. So you can see this feminine disagreeable and the masculine disagreeable, like you're looking at over 60% of people said that, yeah, they're guilty of rape, burglary, and assault. Whereas if you compress the statistics that we've got and just compare masculine faces to feminine faces, actually not a lot of difference. How masculine your face didn't seem to have that much of an effect on whether people judged you to be guilty. But if we then change it to agreeable and disagreeable, huge difference here. You've got this one on assault only being just over 40%, and then up here over 60% of people thought that the disagreeable face was guilty of having committed a crime. For those of you who are statistically minded, this is the results of the chi-squares. So basically, if this number is lower than 0.05, then what we've done has changed the result, and it isn't just by chance. So you see the first one, these numbers were very low. Here, they're well over 0.05, and that's the masculinity and femininity aspect. And then the next one is the perceived agreeableness, and you'll see in a second, there we go, again, it's very, very significant. So those teeny tiny manipulations, and you saw on the faces, it's not actually a huge difference, was making a massive difference to whether people were clicking guilty or not guilty. And another reason why this is, it confirms what I said earlier. Your facial appearance can affect whether or not you're deemed to be guilty of having committed a crime. what was quite interesting in these findings was that a lot of the previous research has suggested that actually masculinity and femininity is very important. And even in experiments done in the lab, people who have a slightly more masculine appearance not only are judged to be slightly more aggressive, they actually do behave more aggressively sometimes, but that's a very broad generalization. Don't treat anyone with a masculine face as a nasty person. But yeah, these effects seem to be much stronger when we were talking about something that involved interpersonal violence. So something like, so the burglary and the rape, the facial effects had a massive effect there, but less of an effect when it came to property theft. Anyway, that's all I've got time for, and thank you all for listening. I just want to say thank you to all these wonderful people who've helped me out doing that study. Thanks.
The first time.
Thank you very much for that. I'm not going to ask whether you think that I'm kind of, how I fall in the whole facial thing. Obviously, I'm just going to move quickly. Yes. Guilty of standing up here and making bad jokes. Yes, I plead guilty to that. So that's the end of the first half. So we're going to take a break of about kind of 15, 20 minutes, give you a chance to go and get a drink. Have a chat with some people, maybe as one of the speakers from the first half if you want to find out more about what they've been up to. And then if you can we'll give you a couple of minutes warning when you get back. If you've got any 1-minute pitches, come and find me. Otherwise, go and get yourselves a drink, and I'll see you in 15, 20 minutes.
everywhere.